Okay, we're going to be talking about exponents and radicals, aka square roots. And what 4 to the 1/2 power is, it's just a fraction as an exponent. And that is the square root of 4. Now, the square root, this is the only exception where you don't write the number here. But what you would do, the denominator of your fraction goes here. So we don't write the 2 for reasons that actually I admit I don't know. But the 2 is not written. But I think we know what a square root is. I should say I think you know what a square root is. What's a square root of 4? Well, it is, let me write it like this, 2 times 2. Expand it. So how many 2's are in here? Or 2 of what is inside the square root? 2. So the square root of 4 is 2. In other words, what times itself is 4? 2. 8 to the 1/3 power. Same thing. The denominator comes outside and it becomes the third root of 8. So what times itself is 8? Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So the third root of 8 is 2. 16. The fourth root of 16. What times itself is 16? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Therefore, the fourth root of 16 is 2. Now, what if we have 64 to the 2/3 power? We've already established that the denominator is the root. And the top is just an exponent. So let's write this. I'm going to make the square roots, or the radical sign. I'm going to put the 64 inside. The denominator goes on the outside. So the 3 is going to go here, and the 2 is going to go here on the outside of the parentheses. So we're raising the cubed root of the third root of 64 to the second power. So first let's figure out what times itself is 64. And spoiler alert, I'm just going to tell you, it is 4. Because 4 times 4 is 16, 16 times 4 is 64. So we've got 4 raised to the second power. A power raised by a power, you just multiply. 1 times 2 is 2. We've got 4 squared, and 4 squared is equal to 16. What if we have 81 to the 3/4? I want to remind you, the denominator goes outside the radical. So let's just go ahead and make our radical sign. We're going to put the 4, it's to the fourth root, and we're going to write the 81 inside the radical, and we're going to put parentheses around it. We're going to put the numerator of our fraction, which is the exponent, to the outside. So what times itself is equal to 81? 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. So the fourth root of 81 is 3. And now we're raising 3 to the third power. 3 to the third power is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. 27. Okay, for this one, what we're trying to do is determine what x is. We're always trying to determine what the variable is whenever we see one. 5 to the x is 125. Well, 5, how many times do you have to multiply 5 by itself to get 125? 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. Therefore, x is equal to 3, because we had to multiply 5 by itself to get 125. Right here, 3 to the x is equal to 81. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is equal to 81. Therefore, x is equal to 4. And there is a video that I'm going to also add that Jimmy and Robert did, solving a couple problems from the textbook that I'll be assigning in the future. Now, let's look at some radicals that involve fractions. And all you do is, it's to the 1/2. All you do, so it's the square root. Just take the square root of the top, take the square root of the bottom, and you never want to square root in the bottom unless if it stays under the radical. And I'll show you how to rationalize the denominator later. But right now, let's just keep it, well, somewhat simple. I know this isn't simple. But the square root of 4 is 2 over 3, so the answer is 2/3. Let's look at 8 over 125 to the 1/3 power. Well, the process is the same, except it's to the third root. Always the denominator is the root, so it's to the third root. So we're going to do the third root of 8 over the third root of 125. The third root of 8, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so 2. And 5 times 5 times 5 is 125, so 5. So the answer is 2/5. Okay, let's look at this problem here. And what we're trying to do is figure out what x is. So we're trying to figure out 2 to the what power is equal to 512. And I think the easiest way to solve this problem is by doing a factor tree. So I went ahead and did the factor tree to save some time in this video. And we're just going to count out the 2's. How many 2's do we have? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9. So we know 2 to the 9 power is equal to 512. So we just say, to figure out what x is, we say 5x plus 4 is equal to 9. And we're going to solve for 9. And we find out that x is equal to 1. Again, we're going to try to figure out what x is. So let's do the factor tree. And after having done the factor tree, we're going to determine that the 5 times 5 to the 5th power is equal to 3,125. So 5x is equal to 5. And disappointingly, x is equal to 1 again, just like the last problem.